Julian, I don't know if there's a special French word for speculation. There should be, because there was lots of it today in the French newspaper L'Equipe surrounding the future of one Zinedine Zidane. He has been linked by that French newspaper to Manchester United, or certainly having an interest in the manager's job at Manchester United. What did you make of those reports, Julian?
Yeah, L'Equipe reporting that according to their information, Zidane is sort of eyeing up the job at United in case Jose Mourinho leaves at some point, or is sacked maybe, or something like that. So it's all very hypothetical, really. They're saying that Mourinho is under contract until 2020, which is the case, but Zidane fancies the idea of coming to the Premier League and especially to Manchester United. You know, if the job becomes available, that's pretty much it, because they also basically ran up the other options that Zidane could have in Spain, where it's impossible for him to go to Barcelona or to Atletico Madrid and no one else. In France, it would be very difficult for him to go to PSG because he's a Marseille born and bred kid. Going to Marseille, it's not really the kind of project that he wants. He wants a bigger club, something bigger. And then the list goes on. Of course, there's possibilities in Italy, especially Juventus, if one day Max Allegri goes. But yeah, they were saying that United has his preference right now if something was to happen to Jose Mourinho.
Still in the realm of speculation, isn't it, Julia? But is there some sort of deliberate move with Zidane putting this out there, just letting it be known that he would be interested?
It looks like it, but that's not really the kind of guy that he is. You know, he's never really been super friendly with journalists and newspapers, for example, and having his messages going through the media like that by just tipping off someone or saying something to someone for, you know, in the objective of being reported and making headlines, etc., etc. He's never been using newspapers in that way, really. You know, most of the time he actually didn't really like journalists and giving interviews and things like that. So on that level, it's a bit unusual. But I guess he's a manager, you know, it's a big name who won a lot recently, who's out of a job, who needs a job, who wants a job. He never said he wanted a sabbatical, for example. He wants to get back into a job quickly. So maybe, you know, as a first, or at least a rare occasion, is him, yeah, trying to put himself out like this.
Can you picture it, Craig?
Well, yes, but as Julian said, it's just all hypothetical.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Manchester United have a manager.
They do indeed.
They have a manager at the moment. It might not be the manager that every Man United fan wants, but they have a manager, and this is just another one of those many stories that will pop up and have popped up over the years. I don't take any of it serious until they sack Jose. If they sack Jose Mourinho, I'll take this story serious.
It's interesting that Julian said that he didn't want a sabbatical. If that was the case, why did he relinquish his role at Real Madrid without having anything else to go to? Because, as Julian just said, there aren't too many clubs he can go to. So you'd have thought that he'd have waited for something to come up before he actually relinquished the job at Real Madrid.
Yeah, and not many managers do leave of their own accord.
No, and that's
it leads to this.
I accept that, you know, maybe he didn't want a sabbatical. He hasn't said that he wanted a sabbatical, but no, I'm aware of him saying that he wanted to get back into management straight away. At the same time, as far as I'm aware, he's not quoted anywhere as saying that he wants a Manchester United job. I think right now, just kind of given what we've heard from Jose Mourinho over the summer, United and Jose Mourinho are easy targets. If Zinedine Zidane does get back into management, big clubs will want him, and he will want to go to a big club. And for speculation's sake, Manchester United right now are the easiest fit. Outside of that, I make nothing of this story.
Again, purely hypothetically, Stuart, purely hypothetically, would he be a good fit at Manchester United? Given what you saw
he's had success
years?
with Real Madrid, obviously in the Champions League, and Manchester United want to get back to that sort of level. Was it because of him, or was it because of the players? I mean, Real Madrid have fantastic players. He's never been, his coaching credentials, he didn't have to go with a junior team and then take a team from a lower level to get them up to the top. So he didn't actually earn the right in terms of being a coach. He earned the right as a footballer to take a good job, but he didn't earn the right as a coach to become the Real Madrid manager. He took over when they were already a very good side, and he just he carried on making them a good side as well.
I said this months ago, and people jumped on. A lot of people jumped on me, mainly Zidane fans, and well, all right, everybody.
All those people that aren't Zidane
Aren't you used to
as
that?
well.
I'm used to it, but he's not proven himself is the wrong word because he's had huge success. But Rob just pointed out part of the reason. He went in after Benitez. He hardly signed any player. I think Morata might have been the only player that he signed. I don't know. I'll stand corrected if somebody points out. But he didn't have to rebuild Real Madrid. He managed them. He managed the players. He managed the shape of the team and worked on the tactics. And these players flourished under him. He's yet. And my point a while ago was he's yet to go into a club and rebuild it. Now, whilst Manchester United are not a huge rebuilding job, there are still a few pieces of that jigsaw that are going to have to get put into place before they're challenging Man City. I don't think anybody's arguing about that. So if he one day wants to pop up at a club like that is at the moment well behind the top team in England, then we're going to see if he's got the real credentials to go in there and, one, A, be successful in the transfer market, and two, go in with lesser players than he had at Real Madrid.
Let's see if you agree with one of our other Premier League club bloggers for Manchester United this time, who nominated Alexis Sanchez as their most important player this year. Craig, do you see it that way? It was Lukaku last year who was nominated.
No, I see their most important player as Paul Pogba. And I see that because he's at the hub and should be at the hub of everything, both defensively and in the final third and in the middle of the park, that they do well. Such a high-profile, big, powerful player with that talent should be absolutely dominating teams, players and games, and then you build around that. So why Alexis Sanchez? That's up there with Jorginho.
No, the thing is, for me, it should be Paul Pogba, without question. But given what we've seen from Jose Mourinho and his willingness to leave Paul Pogba out,
I'm loving this list, by the way. I can't wait to get
you have to think maybe somebody else.
Yeah, but I mean, Sanchez has been a bit part player for Manchester United since he's been there. Even in the first game of the season against Leicester, he did one or two good things, but he gave the ball back. He looks like a player that's lacking confidence at the moment.
Sanchez needs to be Manchester United's most important.
I wish they'd known that, because I tell you what, we could have done every segment on this today of this show. Seriously, we could have done.
Yeah.
I mean, you do a list for tomorrow, Craig. And
get up.
You do a list for every club in the league.
Let's scroll down the rest of these ridiculous.
Well, no, because we're not done with Sanchez here. I want to bring Julian in on this. The argument the Man United blogger made, Julian, was that if Sanchez can rediscover his Arsenal form from 2016-2017, he could be the most important player for Manchester United with those 24 goals he scored.
No, he will have a big part to play in United's season to be a successful season, that's for sure. And he needs to rediscover that form because, like Stuart said, he was not good enough, between January and May when he was there at United last season. I think those 6 months should be useful for him to really kick on his United career this season now coming. But I agree with the boys. I think that Pogba is by far the most important player for United this season. But they will need a very good Alexis if they want to have a successful season as well.
Jorginho was identified as the #1 man for Chelsea in terms of importance.
I disagree entirely. I'm not a fan of Jorginho. I've seen him play for Napoli. Napoli were a good side, and I looked at their team, and when I'm picking out players, Jorginho would have been the 8th or 9th player I'd have picked out of their team as the most important player. I can't see what Sarri sees in him quite as much. He's not athletic. If you saw him playing the Community Shield, he had an absolute shocker in that game. He was better against Huddersfield, but against the very best teams, I think people can run off of him. He's not going to be a creative passer. He's a passer who just passes it square and sideways. He just keeps things moving. I don't think he's a good defensive player. I don't think he's a good player in that holding midfield role. I know Sarri relied on him at Napoli, but again, I didn't think he was one of their best players. So I can't see him being Chelsea's most important player.
I'm with Robbo here. I mean, listen, he might have a good season, I don't know. But I think it is utter nonsense to suggest that he's the most important player for Chelsea. Yeah. I'll tell you why. He wouldn't even be in the top 2. Eden Hazard's way more important. And more important than that, if Jorginho's not having a good time, he's got a better holding midfielder already there, and N'Golo Kante, who, by the way, was Player of the Year and won the World Cup with France. So to suggest Jorginho is the most important player, I just don't buy it.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Well, Kante was 2 and Eden Hazard was 3 in that list. Julien, do you have a take on this? Can you see why perhaps Jorginho was nominated as the most important?
No, I'm a bit struggling as well. I'm like the boys. I mean, it's very early days in his Chelsea career and he might prove us wrong. And I hope for Chelsea and Mauricio Sarri that he does. But above N'Golo Kante and Eden Hazard and even probably other players, yeah, not for me.
If Real Madrid and Barcelona were chasing a holding midfield player and there was 2 players to pick from, and Bayern Munich and all the big teams, Juventus, and there was Jorginho and N'Golo Kante, who's just won the World Cup, and we know how good he's been.
Yeah.
Who do you think these players, these teams would pick or select? Who do you think? Who would they select?
They certainly would
They would select N'Golo Kante, wouldn't they? So who's come up with that damn bloody list?
The argument the blogger uses is that he sets the tone and the tempo for Sarri, unlike any other Chelsea. Potentially. I mean, it's all potential.
Well, I don't know if he saw something different in Napoli, but let's be honest, Jorginho's played 2 games for Chelsea here. Yeah. One, they got embarrassed at the hands of Manchester City. The other was against Huddersfield. Eden Hazard didn't start. I really don't get how Jorginho somehow gets...
It's a holding midfield player. You need to have athleticism to cover your fullbacks. You need to be a good reader of the game, get in between your centre-halves when balls are in wide areas. You need to be able to close the ball down and win it back. You need to be able to be, I would say, still a creative passer. Jorginho, I don't think, has got any of those qualities.
What do you take away from it? Julian Lopetegui's first game in charge, not what he would have wanted.
No. Post Zidane, post Ronaldo, and I think what Atletico Madrid will be thinking is, look, maybe... And Robbo was talking about this the other day about if you take Messi out of Barcelona, and we were discussing it, you know, that's a big if, but they're so reliant. Now there's no Ronaldo to lean on for Real Madrid. Maybe Bale will step up, I hope he does, and some other players. But if it doesn't happen, Atletico Madrid have to be in a position where they're ready to pounce. And I think with the signings they've made and the players that they've kept, and obviously with Costa coming in last year for half of the season anyway, down the spine of that Atletico Madrid team, they look great, and they'll be saying to themselves in the dressing room, they haven't got Zidane anymore across there. They haven't got Ronaldo to rely on. We can get at them. We can get at Ramos. We can get at Varane. We can get in their heads like we usually do, and they haven't got the Ronaldo to bail them out.
And there may be 1 or 2 players that are just getting that little bit older, like Kroos. I mean, he's still a good player, but doesn't have that athleticism. We saw a couple of times Ramos getting beaten by Diego Costa. Marcelo doesn't really want to defend anymore. He's not very good in 1v1 situations. So there are signs that some of the experienced players are just maybe that year older and not quite so good. And the young players aren't coming to the fore at the moment. Lucas Vazquez has done OK. Asensio's done OK. Ceballos, who came on as a sub, has done OK. But they're not really taking the world by storm. They're not going to take Real Madrid to where they have been previously.
Rob, there's only 3 months since they won the Champions League.
Oh, yeah. But those, so I'm saying that,
But if you're saying Ramos and Marcelo and these guys are...
But there was times last year where they didn't do well in La Liga, and there was games... remember that Juventus game at home when they were in the Champions League and they were 3-0 down and they got the penalty near the end. There was games where they were vulnerable.
The thing is, for me, over the last couple of seasons, Real Madrid haven't really put 2 halves of a season, 2 good halves of a season together. And that showed in the way they started La Liga last season, yet second half of the season, after the winter break, they were so much better. We all know how that culminated. And again, we see from Real Madrid what you expect is what looks like a slow start in one of the cup competitions that would be easiest for Lopetegui to dismiss in the European Super Cup. I don't think you read, if you're a Real Madrid fan or player, you don't read too much into this, other than you see Bale stepping up and playing in a manner that you always hoped you would, and maybe haven't seen.
Benzema played well as well.
With huge question marks about Benzema, whether he'd be here at the start of the season. Yet you see that same kind of understanding and willingness to play for the team that you'd come to expect of him. And maybe, again, you thought he wouldn't be here, and you wondered where Real Madrid would turn for that. So there is silver lining around what is a dark cloud. A dark cloud that, for all intents and purposes, is a glorified pre-season friendly.
Well, Julien Laurent is also with us. Julien, do you share that view? Is that something bright that Real Madrid can take from it, particularly the performance of Karim Benzema?
Yeah, I thought he looked good. He looked sharp, probably sharper than you know in many years. He had a very disappointing season last year. He would be the first one to admit that, not scoring enough, not doing enough. Albeit towards the end of the Champions League, we got to see the real Benzema a little bit more. But it's a very big season for him. You know, he's going to turn 31 in December. He's a new manager. There was a lot of uncertainty around his future at the club. So I'm glad he did well tonight, despite the defeat. Same for Gareth Bale, obviously. And I think Julian Lopetegui will need a bit of time as well to implement his ideas. He's a completely different manager than Zinedine Zidane. And also, let's not forget that he struggled a bit at Porto when he was a club manager level, with the national team, whether that was the youth team with Spain or the first team with Spain, before the World Cup at least, he did really well. But at club level, he never found the same rhythm that he did with the national team, for example.
First look at a slightly new look Barcelona. Some of the look at the new players, Vidal and Malcolm.
Vidal started the game. I'm not sure Vidal's going to play too often. I'm not sure when he gets into the side. They've still got that midfield of Busquets, Rakitic, and I think Coutinho will play on the left-hand side of that midfield three. So I think Vidal will be a bit part player. Malcolm looked good playing out on the left-hand side. He then went to the right-hand side in the second half. They've got some youngsters coming through who played quite well, but I think Dembele is going to be key for them. If he can play well on one side, Lionel Messi on the other, Suarez through the middle, they'll have a good season again.
You take anything from Shaka?
No. I don't think it's a great Boca Juniors side at all. And then you make 11 changes, you know, just either at the half or just after the half. I'm not sure if you read too much, how much you can read into Barcelona in that circumstance. I'm still, as much as Stuart likes Dembele and thinks he'll figure, I'm not convinced that he fits in and may find himself surplus.
I think he needs to fit in. I'm not sure he is going to, but he needs to fit in.
I think the signing of Vidal gives him at least an option in there for some energy and some goals and some box-to-box play. If he wants to do something else with Coutinho, or whether Rakitic is maybe off his game and needs a rest. Had a long season last season. Rakitic played a hell of an amount of games, probably more than, I think, almost as many games as anybody else in world football. But the signing of Malcolm adds to the signing of Dembele last year. Will just give them, again, another option if the youngster, who's a very good player, as Robbo mentioned, is just feeling the pressure there. With no Neymar to play wide now, at least they've got a couple of options they can play out there. Yeah. So I think going forward, they're looking strong. But again, at the back, I think defensively, you know, we know Piqué's not getting any younger. So maybe a bit like the Real Madrid defence with Ramos. They're going to be tested. That could be an area of weakness for them.
Spanish dominance in the Champions League, Craig. Barcelona won in 2015. Real Madrid have won 4 of the last 5. Spanish teams overall have won 7 of the last 10 Champions League, going back to 2009. But Manchester City are favourites this year. Juventus are third favourites. Bayern and PSG are favoured above Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. Is this the year, perhaps, when Spanish dominance, recent Spanish dominance, comes to an end in the Champions League?
Well, possibly. I mean, it goes in cycles, I suppose. I mean, the Italians dominated for a little while, and then English clubs raised their head, and Chelsea won the Champions League, Liverpool won it again, Man United won it on a couple of occasions under Sir Alex, and then the Spanish kind of took over recently. But I'm not surprised the Spanish. I mean, Real Madrid and Barcelona in particular have always been a huge draw for top world players. What I would say, obviously, you know, City are strong, PSG have been strong, but neither of those two teams, and I'm thinking about the money, have actually got over the line yet and proved they can do it. The Spaniards they've got the T-shirt, been there, seen it, done it over many, many times.
Julian, what's your feeling? Is this the year that recent Spanish dominance can be challenged? I'm thinking particularly perhaps of PSG.
Yeah, I think challenge for sure. We saw English club last season being really strong with 5 clubs in the last 16, for example. Not all of them then went far, apart from Liverpool, obviously, almost all the way. But I think the English clubs will be very powerful. Obviously, I hope for PSG that they can be around there too. Bayern Munich have a chance as well. But like we've said before, Niko Kovac as a new manager, there's a big question mark around that. And then I saw that Lionel Messi said after the Boca Junior game that the Champions League was the priority for Barcelona this season. They haven't won it for a long time, and I think seeing Real Madrid winning it 3 times in a row, if you are Barcelona or Barcelona fan, must really, really annoy you. So, you know, I can see Barca really going all for the Champions League this season, more than La Liga, for example. So I think it will be a very open competition.
Yeah, Lionel Messi even saying as much on the field before that Juan Gamper trophy. It's not very many times in recent years we've seen Barcelona and Real Madrid not amongst the top 2 or 3 favourites.
And I think, as a club, the experience of getting there and doing it is invaluable. And Pep Guardiola spoke about this last year and talking about how he wants to build Manchester City into a club that can compete consistently, not just on a one-off, not just win it once now and then you kind of forget about it, but a legacy that will live long after him. You also have to keep in mind, and I think this is an important factor, that between Barcelona and Real Madrid, now Juventus, they had the 2 standout players of a generation, Lionel Messi and Ronaldo. I think that factored heavily into that Spanish dominance as they kind of ran the table.
So if you're putting your money down, or if you're putting Craig's money down, you betting
if I was putting Craig's money down,
are you betting against the Spanish team this year?
I am this year. I think this is the most open of the Champions League tournaments we've seen for quite some while. I still think there might be something wrong with Real Madrid. I think Lopetegui might have a problem this season. Barcelona are a very, very good side, but they haven't done particularly well in the last 2 or 3 years. That might be slightly better. But I think it's a very open. Man City have got every opportunity to go and win it this time.
Man City, yeah. If I was putting my money down right now and I was going outside of Spain, I would only go one place for experience. That would be Juventus.
Juventus. They're right there. Third favourites.
For the experience of the manager, for the experience of the one area I'm worried about is the Buffon departure and the replacement in goal there. But in terms of the defence, it's strong. The midfield is strong, and they've bought obviously one of the greatest players in the world. If he's fit, playing through the middle.
They've got a massive squad, Juventus. When you look through the list of players, the teams they can pick, Allegri could also go quite weak at times in Serie A and then pick the best team for the Champions League.
Ronaldo's only gone there for one reason, hasn't he? It's not to win a Serie A title.
Well, I'm sure he'd like to win it because they've won it, I think, 7 straight. But at the end of the day, he's gone for the big one again.
Serie A's back, and for those of you watching in the United States, your new home is ESPN Plus and ESPN. We'll get to that in our feature game this week in a second, but one of the first games to begin with is Ronaldo FC at Chievo Verona.
Don't start.
No, I know.
Defending champions get off to a flying start.
Good one, Lazio Napoli.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting encounter, and as much as Lazio kept hold of Milinkovic-Savic, I think that was a big coup for them. Ancelotti coming out of Napoli. I think Napoli get the better of Lazio just in this one. They won convincingly twice last season, but I think it's going to be narrow. 2-1 I'm going for somewhere around.
Yeah, Lazio missing out on the Champions League on the final day last year. Going to go a draw with that one. Now, live across the United States on Sunday, Torino against Roma. They've made a lot of new signings, Torino.
Yeah, and Torino aren't that bad at home. I think they make a fist of this, and busy as Roma have been in the transfer market, both going in and out, I still think Roma get the better of Torino. Again, just.
Yeah, you and I did Roma pre-season. They look good. They've got new signings as well. I'm going to sit on the fence for that one.
Are you just sitting on all the fences?
No, but if it's a draw, I'm right.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. AC Milan against Genoa.
Yeah, I like what AC Milan are doing or have done this off-season. I think they get this season off to a flying start.
Yeah, with you on that one. That's a tough opener for Inter at Sassuolo.
It could be, but I like Inter. I think Inter are going to push Juventus hard this season. I like what Inter are doing. I'm going to go Inter.
You and I have got our new favourite player, haven't we, after watching him in pre-season? Yeah. Lautaro Martinez, who scored a worldie against Atletico Madrid.
Is he going to score against Sassuolo, you think?
He will.
All right, okay.
He will, and I'm going to agree with you. So we kind of agree and kind of disagree. The opening weekend of Serie A. All the games on ESPN Plus, as well in the US as Torino Roma on ESPN News on Sunday. 10 Premier League games to get to, so let's get to the first one very quickly. Cardiff against your old boys.
Yeah, my old boys. Rebound.
Okay, that'll be a draw. Everton against Southampton.
I'm going to go Everton at home for this one.
If they don't score again, they're going to be called Southampton.
Hold on, you think this is going to be a draw?
Yeah. We don't have a draw button. This is the mystique of the draw button.
Disappointed. I thought that was a foregone conclusion. All right, carry on.
Okay, thank you. Leicester Wolves.
I am going to go Leicester City.
That's in depth, great. Spurs Fulham.
I'm going to go Spurs.
Because?
Because they're better than Fulham.
It's good, this. Don't tell me you're going to go West Ham.
I won't tell you.
Okay. Boom. They wanted this done quickly. I don't think they expected Chelsea Arsenal.
Oh, now this one is tricky. Because I actually have Arsenal finishing top 4.
Okay.
But Stamford Bridge, I'm going to go Chelsea.
Yeah, likewise. Brighton. Man United repeated the 1983 Cup final. And Smith must score.
And what happened in that game?
He didn't score, and they lost, Brighton.
I don't think Smith will score either again. I'm going to go Manchester United.
I don't think he'll score either because he doesn't play for either of the two teams. Burnley, Watford.
This is an interesting one, but I'm going to go Burnley here.
Yeah, they've got the game against Istanbul on the Thursday. Yeah.
See, it took some... Don't bottas. Yeah, don't bottas this one either. Don't bottas.
So we were given like 2.5 minutes for that. Rapido! Beat that next week. Some bad news from Manchester City today. An injury picked up in training to Kevin De Bruyne. The full extent, Shaka Hislop, probably won't be known for a couple of days after scans, but it's looking like it's going to be a couple of months, and they're saying October. How big a blow is that for City?
Well, it's a blow. Listen, nobody needs me to tell him exactly how good a player Kevin De Bruyne is, how important he has been to Manchester City. But this is why you have big squads, and Manchester City have probably the biggest and best in the Premier League. Spent on a midfielder again this summer in Riyad Mahrez. You look at Bernardo Silva and his performance against Arsenal. You have Sane, who didn't even start the game against Arsenal, on the bench. David Silva also to come. I think Manchester City will be all right. At this stage of the season, early in the league, early in the Champions League, where regardless of what's to come, you expect them to cope.
The timing of this isn't ideal, but you would rather, with City expected to get through the Champions League group, you would rather this occurred now than it did in the second half.
Without question, you know, any time you pick up it's never a good time to be injured, as you know, in quotation marks. But yes, you know, given what City have and in terms of squad, how early it is in the season, you can make up ground at the back end. Kevin De Bruyne, given his exertions in the summer, maybe this comes timely in terms of rest for himself. Again, not ideal, you'd prefer not to have it, but you try to find the silver lining, and City are able to find that quite comfortably.
I'm going to give you a couple of stats, and it's to do with the importance of De Bruyne to Manchester City. When he plays, their win ratio is 66%. When he doesn't play, their win ratio is 42%, and they score, on average, fewer goals per game. Does any team in the Premier League have such an important player overall to what they do?
I'm not sure. And again, as much as the stats may suggest, I think City can cope.
Oh, they'll be fine, yeah.
Be able to cope.
Sure.
Now, whether anybody else has one player that's important, I don't know. I don't follow or kind of hang on those stats. I think they can be deceptive at times.
The good news here is, though, from first reports, it looks like it's not like a serious cruciate or anything like that. It could be a similar injury to the one he had in his debut season with City. That kept him out for 8 or 9 weeks. And I think, as you say, with the players that City have got that can come in, they'll be able to handle this without any issues.
They will, you know, again, regardless of how long it is at this point. And at this point, you're hoping for the best. As a neutral, you're hoping for the best. City can cope, sure.
ESPN FC, keep up to date with how long De Bruyne will be out. We'll update this story over the next 48 hours.